Hi, this is JP Newman at Fulfillionaire. And so many of us are asked for money, especially at the end of the year. You get all those asks from all those different charities. And I think for most of us, we roll our eyes like, oh, it would be nice to do. It's a nice thing. But what if I was to tell you that actually giving money or giving your time away is actually very self-serving? Let me tell you more. When we're talking about this topic of wealth for impact, to really understand there's certain rules that are both the rules of money and also the rules of our tax code that actually make giving an incredibly important piece of what you do to create more financial wealth for yourself. I know this sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. And so as we explored today, before I go right into it, we're going to talk more and more about why is it that we have a strange relationship, most of us, with giving, where it's hard or we don't know how much to give, or we want to give when we get older, when we just make a little more money, we'll be more generous. How do I know when someone asks me for money, did I give them enough? Did I give them less than what they asked for? All this confusion. And by the way, it's confusing for me too. I get asked all the time. And I'm going to give you some strategies here of how to kind of clean that up in your mind so that next time you get asked, it'll feel better in your nervous system and you can have a clear plan around this. So let me jump in. What we're really talking about here is purpose-driven legacy. And so I would ask for you, what does that even mean, purpose-driven legacy? It's really about this notion of why even bother doing this? It's one thing to say, I want to feel good, or I was told so as a kid, but really what is your legacy as to why you give? What does impact mean to you? And the answer is it's different for everybody. So let's jump in first of all by saying, it's interesting, there was an article in the New York Times this March, and it talked about that Warren Buffett in 2010 created the Giving Pledge. And the Giving Pledge was asking billionaires if they would pledge to give away half their money during the course of their lifetime. And in 2010, he was able to get over 300 people, billionaires, to sign up for this. And it was incredible because if you think about the impact of all that money, it turns out it was trillions of dollars, not billions, trillions of dollars for impact around the world. And for, as many of you know, sometimes it takes so little to change a person's life, whether it's in the US or what have you. But here's what's interesting. Very few people have actually gone through with the pledge. In fact, as the years have gone on and they've thought about it, and there's been trends in philanthropy right now, the thought has been, why me? Why should I do it? Maybe someone else should do it. And they've either been renegotiating their pledge or just getting out of their pledge altogether. Some people say, let the free markets, just invest in corporations and everything else will work out just fine. And if you think about it, what I think's kind of missing from that is, and actually it gives me sympathy because I think a lot of people get really angry at the billionaires, and there's more and more of them, especially in this time of AI and all these companies having these exponential rises. And there's so much anger as why are billionaires so stingy? And I think that's an important question to ask. Why are billionaires so stingy? And I think they're stingy because they don't have a good grasp on this wealth for impact and what it even means. Yes, I actually could tell you that I have, this sounds surprising, some sympathy for those billionaires. Not sympathy for the way they're acting, but sympathy for their nervous system. Because if you think about it from their nervous system, what it tells me, if you make a pledge and you've got more money than you can use in this lifetime, I mean, how many more things can you buy? You can buy a plane, you can buy a bunch of houses, you can buy a boat, but like, honestly, the earth can only produce so many interesting things. So until you can buy a planet, which maybe will be the next for human beings, you're stuck on this earth and there's not that much more you can buy. So if you've made that kind of money, whatever you like, way more than you can spend in your lifetime, why would you be stingy? And the answer is simply, your nervous system either feels not safe or dysregulated. And why would you feel dysregulated? You're probably being asked all the time because people know you're a billionaire. You're out of the closet that you have money. So you get asked all the time. Maybe you're not clear on why you're doing this purpose-driven legacy, like why you're doing it, or feel safe enough that I was to give away half of that money, which would only leave me with $1 billion, that it just doesn't feel like enough, which by the way, blows my mind, but that's a whole other topic. So let's dive into this. For you, not the billionaires, what would be the kind of things that maybe confuse you around this topic? I can tell you for me, I never knew how much to give per year. I know a lot of our religions tell us to tithe 10%. Take all your income. And by the way, I've had a funny thing. I say sometimes I negotiate with God and say, is that gross or net income when I get to my 10%? Because even for fulfillionaires, it's a constant practice of staying generous so that you can be in the flow of giving and receiving with your currency, which is flow. And so the church will tell you 10%. I think that's a good place to start. Actually, the temples will tell you the same thing. I think most importantly, depending on where you're at in life, if you've gotten to the point where you are truly winning the financial game, meaning that your active income and your passive income is more money than you need after you save and after everything, what do you want to give along the way? I have found for me, by the way, that percentages are great. And in all seriousness, I mean, I'm not telling you how much to give, but I think I keep a spreadsheet. So the way I do it is I look at my annual income. And for me, like a lot of entrepreneurs, it really varies. So there's not like a set amount of money, but I've got this very simple spreadsheet. And it really just tells me about what I'm making, about the kind of charities that I want to pledge to, and what that, for me, I try to get between 8 and 10% of net, not gross. And that's actually what tithing mostly is. So if you make whatever you make a year, maybe you give, again, if you're in that category where you can afford to do it, maybe you give 10%. And so then what I do every year is I start to allocate, especially towards the end of the year. Most people are heavier in the fourth quarter. And I allocate and I try to match that number because by my fourth quarter, I kind of know what I made or kind of what I'm going to make that year. And if I know if I'm going to do 8 or 10% of it, I just match it to a spreadsheet and I start to allocate. It's actually kind of fun because you think about what are the 5 or 10 charities that matter most to you. And every year it might change priority. I notice for me right now, I have more attraction to being a really good philanthropist, but really with a good ROC, return on community, with environmental. Other years it's been different charities. And the fun thing now is when your kids get older, and I started this when my kids were about 14, I get the family involved. It becomes a family meeting. And I go around the dinner table and I ask them, what are the things they're most concerned about with the earth? What kind of challenges would they like to see solved? And by inviting them in, they'll bring to me at dinner. I make them research and we come back a week later, the kind of topics or the kind of charities they would be interested in. When they were younger, they couldn't name the charity, but they can name the problem. And then I would go to the next step and start to actually identify the charity for them. I can tell you what this really does is it builds family bonds forever. I am highly motivated at this point in my life, as my kids are now 19 and 20, to continue this journey with them. And as they get older and older, they now know that philanthropy is a responsibility, that with success comes the responsibility of philanthropy. And not only do they get it, but they're kind of getting more and more involved. I'm hoping at one point that it is just a family tradition. So why is this self-serving? When I made the statement, this is self-serving. Here's why giving can be self-serving. And by the way, if you're saying, JP, you're rolling your eyes saying, I'm not in that category. Good for you, JP. I'm younger. I don't have it yet. Then what you can give is your time. Because ultimately, the way you solve giving in the highest way you can is that your action, whether it's your time, your money, your knowledge, your gift, helps another person from having to ask again. If you can get to that simple point that you break a loop of that person having to shamefully ask, you've done a lot of good. So wherever you're at in this journey, there is an invitation for you right now to give in some really impactful way. And that's what Wealth for Impact is. You can use a formula if you get wealthier. If you're younger, think about what I just said. What can you do with what you have to change the course of someone's life that they don't have to ask again? Because you gave them the knowledge, you gave them a skill, you gave them a network. You could have given them a friend to have lunch with that changed their trajectory. There's so many things you can do just by being creative around this idea of purpose-driven legacy. And by the way, what you're going to find over time, you start doing all these things and you kind of forget about them, but they remember you. That person will come to you and you bump into them at a party, you get this text and they're like, JP, that one action you did, that one small action created this huge rift in my life. That person that I met, that little money that you trusted me with, created a different trajectory for my life. Like one action led to a bigger action. And so when you think about the legacy of all that at the end of the day, it's for some people, maybe it's one cause. They want to save the gorillas. They want to do these things. I think for me, it's not about one cause. It's about trying to keep that generosity going as long as I can and all these little things of impact, these ripples of impact. I think some people know that as the butterfly effect, that the more you give, those ripples get bigger and bigger. And it's a fun game. So why is this selfless and selfish at the same time? It's selfless for obvious reasons that I explained. Why is it, would you say it's selfish or self, I don't think it's selfish, but self-valuing? On the emotional level, we're all wired to give. It actually makes us feel, as you know, most of us are better at giving than receiving. I think it's naturally wired in us. Part of happiness comes from when we give to other humans. It's in our DNA. So I would say that if you want to find more happiness, more satisfaction, more connectedness in your life, less isolation, giving something is a great place to start. But you'll get, as the sages have told us for many, many times, this sounds really counterintuitive, that the person who is the giver oftentimes is actually getting more benefit than the receiver. And I know that sounds counterintuitive. Yeah, of course the receiver is getting more. I can tell you from my own experience time and time again, the joy, the satisfaction of what I've learned gives me more than what the receiver got in return. And a lot of times it's a gift that keeps on giving. I made my largest pledge a couple of years ago to something that felt really uncomfortable because the amount that I'd pledged really hit an edge for me. I had never given that much away before. And it was scary. My brain said, are you sure you can afford it? And what if next year is a bad year? Just because this year was better. And all the things that your mind's going to tell you of why not to do it. And also, by the way, I love the idea that if you're hitting an edge of comfort without hurting yourself or putting your family in jeopardy, you're probably at a number that is significant to you. So if it's $100, $500, or a lot more, that edge probably tells you where you're at. Be responsible with it. Use the spreadsheet. Know how much you have every year to give away. And if you know that early on about what you can give, how fun is that? Because you literally get, as people come to you, you know your budget. I have a philanthropic budget every year, and I know about what I can spend. So on that side, those are all the reasons why it is a I hate to use ish, we'll call it a selfish act. But here's the other thing, if someone hasn't told you this, the tax code makes it so easy for you to just be generous once you have some money and you have some taxes and some liabilities. It's not dollar for dollar, but there are so many different ways to run philanthropy that actually it almost becomes a decision of, hey, do I want to pay the government the money in taxes, or would I rather give it to a charity that I'm really, really have a passion about, that it can really effectuate and use that money? And again, it's not exactly a dollar for dollar, but so many times, what a fun decision you get to make. Hey, why give that to the government when I can do something really, really good with it? Personally, what really makes giving really fun is mixing it up between your local community and sometimes going to your larger national things and sometimes even internationally. But I really, really like when I'm part of a charity that I can actually see the impact that I made. So when you look at like Wealth for Impact, when you can see whether it's the kids you affected, the education, whatever you did, and you actually get to see the cause and the difference that you created, it is the most lovely gift. And for me, it's been a gift that keeps on giving, because you build new relationships with new people, you learn something new, you get so much out of it. So legacy isn't something that you have to wait for. I know this is hard, it's hard for all of us, but what might be helpful is to understand there is a framework here. It's really, really hard to think about this. This may seem like a luxurious topic if you're still in your safety mode, meaning that like you're barely like, if you can't pay your bills, it's pretty hard to think about how you can give to others. Although a lot of people with less money tend to be more generous than people with a lot of money, which is kind of an interesting thing in itself. But what I would say to you is just understand where you're at in your process. So the journey goes like this. A lot of people start in scarcity. They just don't have enough to pay their bills, and you're in scarcity. Again, a pretty hard spot to be a generous giver in. But if you're lucky enough to kind of find your framework through your business and through a financial framework and plan, you go from scarcity, you can go to actually abundance. And abundance feels like I'm taken care of. I'm not worrying about my bills. My family's taken care of. Like I can give a little bit away. Like things are just fine. But where you can really go from there as things build for you is in that feeling of going from scarcity to abundance, I got it taken care of, is the moment you start to go bigger. So bigger you'd go to impact. So you basically go to a place from scarcity, which is me, survival of me, to abundance, which is I've got the we covered. And then you ultimately would go into impact, which is something bigger than you and your family. And that is ultimately your us. So the journey, if you think about it, is scarcity to abundance to being that impact entrepreneur, having that legacy in your life. And the journey looks like emotionally from me to we to us. And kind of figure out, just take a minute now, where you're at with this and be honest with it. I can tell you that once you get to that place of abundance, you get to keep practicing that muscle of generosity and watch what it does for you. The reason why I'm filming this, the reason why we do these, the reason why we're doing Fulfillionaire, our mission statement, is to really help you through this journey and help other people with money find their safety, their freedom, a plan to make more money, to give and receive and flow of currency. But the whole goal of all that is once you feel safe and you're a happier, more fulfilled person, and you can share that with your community, imagine sharing that with the planet. Imagine the ripple effect that you can have when you're at that spot of abundance, living life as a fulfillionaire. Our vision is simple right now. It's a little audacious, but it's simple. I dream of having 10,000 people who have watched the Fulfillionaire framework and have been to the workshops and heard the podcast, taking a Fulfillionaire pledge. The Fulfillionaire pledge is 10,000 people taking a pledge to giving more than $10,000 more than they usually would have away to a charity. So if you're already going to give 1,000 away, maybe you do 2,000, whatever it would be. We want to get you to 10,000 or more, which we understand comes with time. Think about the numbers. If you were to take 10,000 entrepreneurs making a $10,000 more of a pledge because they understood this episode, and you'll know when you can do it. When this comes to you easily, you are a fulfillionaire. It's a great litmus test for where you're at in your journey. When this becomes easy and with joy, if you take 10,000 people at a 10,000 pledge, that's 100 million. Now imagine this. What if you took some people who are a bit wealthier, maybe a bit older in their journey, and what if they were to pledge $100,000? You'd be at $1 billion of impact, of new impact. What do you think the world could feel like if you put $1 billion of extra money out there of impact? That was directed, not just like feel good, but directed with consciousness, with love, with joy, and with ease, because you understand the practices we're talking about. That is the vision. My audacious goal is in the next 36 months that we get this accomplished. We'll tell you more because we are creating a nonprofit foundation and we're going to help you. We're going to help you not only in figuring out how to do the money, but how you can create the best tax risk adjusted benefit for you so that it's a win-win from all stages. You get to win by giving more, but you also get to win by not having to give so much to the government, all legally. That's what the government wants from you. It's in the tax code. We're going to show you how to do that soon. Thank you for listening to the episode, and we wish you all the best in your journey from going to abundance to maximum impact. Thank you so much.